Rise and shine on Australia's Vision Christian Radio.
I must admit, I'm looking forward to this accent-driven conversation that's coming up next, because we've got an Irishman that's just walked in the room, and Fel loves Irish accents.
I'm very excited, actually.
So, Des Kennedy's with us from MoMENtum. How you going, Des?
Good, thanks. Maybe I should put on a French accent or something. Something a little bit different. No, I'm stuck with my accent.
I like to ask people how the Irish accent is, actually. And my kids say it's terrible. What do you think, Des?
The accent?
Yes.
I hate my accent.
You know.
I do. I hate it.
No, the Irish have the best
What about Fel?
Everybody I'm
do you
around
think she's done a good
loves
accent?
it.
What about my fake version of the Irish accent?
Well,
is that okay?
that's a Dublin accent.
Okay.
You're putting on, as opposed to a Belfast accent, which I have.
And how does that go? Is it okay? Would I get away?
It's okay. I mean, it's
okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Do I say top of the morning? That's one thing I wanted to ask. Do you say that in Ireland?
To be sure.
Nobody says that in
Nobody
Ireland.
says that. So we should take it out of the accent then. Well, we have got, in a normal tone, we have got Des Kennedy here, meeting you for the first time from MoMENtum. Good morning, Des.
It's great to be here.
Oh, we're so excited.
Such a joy.
Oh, it's wonderful you came and brought your accent with you.
Yeah, it's very hard to leave it behind. But yeah,
that's right.
But you have been in Australia a long time.
I have.
It's stuck around. How long have you been in Australia for?
Since 1981.
Wow.
So that's like 45 years.
It goes to show you
amazing.
the power of the Irish
I've
accent.
actually lived in this part of the world longer than I've lived in Ireland. Like, people
Wow.
still say you're Irish because of the accent, I guess.
Yeah.
And a warped sense of humour.
It does sort of give you away.
It does.
But we're talking this morning about all things men and women's camp.
Oh, yeah.
And you head up MoMENtum, which
I
we
do.
play on Vision. I have sat in my home in my kitchen and listened to you and Tim chatting away. I hear it's men's business and I think, maybe I should turn it off. But I have been known to listen along. Can you tell us a bit about MoMENtum?
Well, just on that subject, it's interesting because donations to MoMENtum, we have more women donate to MoMENtum than men, which is really interesting. And also we get so many women who contact us and say, I don't know why my husband, my partner behaved that way, but now I know. I understand now a bit more about the way my partner thinks or my man thinks and so forth. And so that works really well.
So it's a little bit like a secret look into the mind of a man. What a scary thing to podcast.
That would be very scary.
Exactly right. MoMENtum is great. I mean, it started off, my background was men's ministry when I came to Christ.
Right.
And so I led 63 men's groups at Hillsong in my cravat. And so that was down in the southeast Queensland, so Gold Coast, etc. Anyway, later then, when I left those ministries, I was down in Port Macquarie, which is where I actually live. And so I was talking to the guy who runs the local radio station in Port Macquarie, and he said, what do you want to do with your life? You're down here and you have no idea what you want to do. And I said, well, I love working with men. I mean, I love helping men do life better, be better men, be better dads, because I wasn't a good dad. And I wasn't a good husband either, twice. And so, I really wanted to help men get closer to God, find faith, live Christian godly lives. And so he said, well, why don't you do a radio show for men in Port Macquarie? And I said, well, I know nothing about radio. I know how to turn one on. And that's as close as I get.
That's a good start, isn't it?
That's a good start, that's right. So I was driving up the next weekend up to Brisbane, and Tim Charles, who was in one of the Connect groups that I led, had become a good friend. And so on the drive up, I phoned Tim and I said, hey, Tim, I've been asked to do this radio show for men in Port Macquarie. I said, can you give me some tips on what to do with radio? And he said, no.
Oh, that's harsh, isn't it?
I said, that's not very nice. I don't even know. He said, I want to do it with you.
Oh.
I said, that's amazing, but know that if God is in this and he's going to bless it, it'll be huge. And so he said, no, I'm in. So we spent maybe a year, 18 months planning, and then we started. So 165 shows later, and it's just amazing on all sorts of topics. You name it. In the men's world, we talk about identity, we talk about pornography, we talk about being a good dad, being a good husband. We talk about church history and how that relates to men and how they do church. Anxiety, depression, gender issues, sexuality.
Wow.
Yeah, just everything in the world of men we'll talk about that they don't talk about in church.
Well, because you think on a general Sunday, it would be very difficult to cover a lot of those topics in a normal service when
Yes.
you've got children there and wives and
exactly.
there must be an opportunity there to pull men away. And the same, I know with women, we do the same. But
Yeah.
for men to pull aside and say, hey, let's chat about some men's stuff together.
Yeah.
Have you found power in that?
Oh, that's a huge part of that because men will listen to a podcast when they're driving,
Sure.
and so many people contact and say, look, I was driving along local radio station. Next thing you guys were on talking about this stuff, and most of the radio stations are, they put it on at a time that's appropriate, and often if it's a really sensitive subject, I'm sending a show out. I'll say, hey, little ears shouldn't be listening to this. So we had, for example, Patricia Werkun. I don't know if you know Patricia Werkun. She's a Christian sexologist.
Okay.
And so we had her on only a few weeks ago talking about how parents teach sex education to their children in a godly way, in a biblical way. It's huge, but it's obviously raw. And so you have to be careful how you address those sort of subjects. But that's cool.
It's really cool. And I think it's important that you've got, as you said before, you've got a program for men, but because of the nature of playing on the radio, women can actually listen in and understand better what's going on. So it's quite a unique sort of formula, isn't it? Because obviously, when you have a men's camp, there's no women go, and when you have a women's camp, no men go. But this is actually a way that you can sort of combine both. But you are obviously speaking to men's issues,
yes.
But you, in some respects, actually sharing it with both.
Well, an example is there was. I think it was a couple of years ago, we interviewed a couple who lived in the Gold Coast. And this couple, great couple, had both been married before. They met through church. They started to do life together and get married and so forth. But then domestic violence, verbal violence, broke into their relationship. And so we found out about it. They had been restored at this stage, which is great. But we talked to the husband and said, look, what drove you to behave this way towards your wife? What were the triggers? And it turns out his wife had left him for another woman. And so he felt the only way he could control his life was by controlling his new wife,
right.
which is so counterproductive. So then we interviewed the wife and said, what was that? How did that feel like to you?
Right.
What was the experience? And she talked about depression, she talked about anxiety, she talked about anger, she talked about all sorts of things that confronted her in that world. And then we interviewed them both together. And we said, how do you manage your world now? And we talked about boundaries. We talked about trigger words. We talked about the sort of things that they're looking out for. And they now coach other couples in church on the Gold Coast.
Wow.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. But there's so many people who just are in that situation. They say, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Everything I say is wrong. Yeah. I can't say anything right. And so, but there is a right answer. And it comes with the relationship with God. It comes about being, what's the term, repentant, I guess.
Yes.
And those sort of things really can help in relationship.
Absolutely.
There's a point where it goes too far, and there's no recovery from that. But I have another good friend who actually lives on the Gold Coast, and he was part of one of my men's groups. And this guy, I told him, get rid of her. I mean, he's a Christian guy, but it was so bad. I said, man, get out of that. It's toxic where you're living. And he persevered to the point where now he has a growing, better relationship with his wife. So I was wrong. I gave him the wrong advice. But, sometimes you just don't know where that line is.
Wow.
When those frying pans are coming across your head, it's not a good place to be.
Yeah, too right.
That's not healthy, no.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of good stories to listen out to on the MoMENtum podcast.
Yes.
Where's the best place to find out more?
Well, we've got a website, which is, so many people access it through the website, which is www.momentumaustralia.org. Okay. And we now have taken a lot of our previous shows and put them onto YouTube. Okay. So you can access all those YouTube videos, either go search for MoMENtum for Men or go on our website and you can get them there. Lots of information. We also have a care line. So 1-800-000-MEN.
Oh.
So if you're struggling with life, guys, if you're listening and you're doing life on your own and you want to have a safe and confidential conversation away from the pressures of your spouse or whatever, go to 1-800-000-MEN.
That's great.
I think it's from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week.
Wow.
Brilliant. That's
a
so
great
good.
resource.
Lots of different things that you can tap into. So probably the easiest thing is the website, MoMentumAustralia.org.
Yes, right.
You can find out all those links and connections and everything. Obviously, we play Momentum on Vision, and it's in the app as well if you want to catch up on some of those other podcasts. But it's been so good to have you with us, mate, and I reckon we could have probably talked with Des all morning.
Well, I could listen to your Irish accent all day.
Let's schedule it. It's all good.
We would love that.
So
That's good.
Thank you for being with us.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.